Today on Parenting Unplugged, I'm joined by Gemma Coe, a toddler and preschool sleep specialist who's helped hundreds of exhausted families find their rhythm again. If bedtime feels like a battle or you're running on fumes, this one's for you. Get ready for real talk, practical tips, and a gentle approach to sleep that actually works. Hi Gemma, thank you for joining me on Parent Unplugged. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Would you mind start by telling the listeners just a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so my name's Gemma Coe. I'm a child sleep specialist. I go under the sort of brand name of childsleepspecialist.co.uk. So I work with all children, babies and all children who struggle to sleep. But my main interest and my special kiddie group is 2, 3, 4 and 5-year-olds, just a slightly older age group.
Lovely. So toddlers and preschoolers.
Toddlers and preschoolers.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, this one's going to be for me with my children for sure. Let's start by talking about bedtimes then. I think this is often a big struggle for parents. Why do some toddlers in particular resist bedtimes, and what can parents do to make that routine smoother?
Yeah, 100%. All right. So, I mean, there's loads of stuff going on for toddlers. So I think first, they might be resisting bedtime just because they're not tired. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, so is not an age group anymore that we can expect to sleep from 7 till 7. You know, right. I mean, lots of parents didn't have that in the first place, but they might not be tired enough. So their sleep pressure isn't there. They want to carry on playing. So that's one big reason. And it's like, let's look at their sleep needs. Now they're getting older and older. Do they need that much sleep anymore? Okay. Another reason why there is this bedtime is sometimes as parents, we're quite pressured in the evening and we're trying to do 1,000 things. And then we're like, oh, look at the time, bedtime, let's go. And it's like they just can't make that transition from one thing to another straight away. All right. So that can sometimes be difficult if they don't have an adequate wind down into bedtime. And just like that decompression before then starting the bedtime routine. Mm-hmm. And the last one is, I mean, it's a place, isn't it, where typically grown-ups are in control. Mm-hmm. And toddlers are thriving and they really, really want that level of control. And we can give them control over the bedtime routine. But if you're dictating what's happening next, it might just be that natural, no, thank you today. Where's that boundary? And I'm going to push it. Mm-hmm. And that often happens at bedtime when they're tired and quite emotional.
Right. Okay. So how would you say is best to combat that? Should we have quite a set routine so that they start to see the sleep props coming, know the wind down routine, and then it makes that transition a little easier?
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels fairer, especially if it's kind of the same thing every single night. Mm-hmm. You know what's coming next. And bedtime routines, yours has probably been the same for years, right? Yeah. And actually, if we skip a couple of steps, we feel a little bit discombobulated. It's like, oh, hang on, something's wrong. Oh, I didn't do my teeth, right? Yeah. So with toddlers, we can use visual cues, like a bedtime poster. I use flashcards with my clients, and we stick them up as a poster, and they tell you what's coming next.
Love that.
But also, if there's something that they're sort of pushing the boundaries, another kiss, another cuddle, another story, another sip of water, we can cover those off in the flashcards. It's like, oh, well, we've done 1, 2 stories. What's next? Oh, look, let's go and brush our teeth, for example. So the visual cues just help things feel fairer. They help show an order and they help get them engaged.
I love that. What can we do though? So say you've followed your routine, you've brushed your teeth, you've had your story, you've had that cuddle when you've said goodnight. This is what mine do. And you walk out the door and then they come out the room and you put them back, and they come out the room and you put them back. How do we handle that? How do we get them to recognise that this is the end of the routine now? We've done everything we've agreed. This is the time to go to sleep.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's kind of that mental checklist you need to do. Is like, have we actually done everything? Because the other day I heard mummy and the bottle of water was on the side in the kitchen still. It's like, my water's not here. It's like, oh, well, of course I'll go and get your water. So it's not anything wrong with that. Yeah. So there's that. And then there's the pushing of the boundaries. It's like, I've said goodnight. And I think as long as we know that we've got their sleep needs right and they are tired enough, because there'll be less resistance if they feel that sleep pressure. And it's like, you know, the melatonin is there in their body helping them feel sleepy. And there's that sleep pressure from the day that's helping them feel sleepy. Then they will be sort of naturally in that process of wind down. But actually they've still got some energy. Mummy, mummy, mummy. Then, and if it's happening again and again and again, then the best thing we can do is just be super boring. And it's just like, we don't have to be mean, but we can certainly be like, come on, my boy's called Charlie. Charlie, it's bedtime. And then let's use the actions that we want. I will need you to lie down. close your eyes and be quiet as a mouse and sleep will come. And if we just repeat, you know, even if they don't have the impulse control yet not to call out, they can certainly learn through repetition in terms of what's expected.
Yeah. Okay. So we're teaching them that nothing fun is going to happen. They're not going to get any of these added extras that they're asking for. And just through repetition and being boring, just keep putting them back to bed and saying the same things and letting them know exactly what you want them to do. Lay down, go to sleep.
Yeah, the actions are really helpful because the whole phrase go to sleep, I mean, what does that even mean? Yeah. Right? So if you're telling them what you want from them, that's really, really helpful. I need you to lie down. I need you to close your eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what's expected
a good point,
of me.
actually. I like that. Okay. How can we deal with early starts to the day? Any advice on what we can do if they keep getting up early?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one, especially at the moment, the time that we're filming this. There's like, you know, it's a really, really long day, isn't it? And that light is pouring in. And actually, if we don't have the optimal environment, if that light is coming into the room, it's our natural body's response to wake up, you know. So 2 things really reinforce that early start. One is natural daylight and the other one is food. Right. So sometimes parents go, oh, well, I'll get them up and I'll just give them breakfast. But that's actually reinforcing the pattern again. So when I look with children with early waking, I've sort of asked myself questions like, are they waking happy? In which case we're thinking their sleep needs might be met. Or are they waking upset? Right. And so it's like, if they're waking happy, I'm like, well, maybe we need to start shifting the timing of bedtime. You know, if their sleep needs are met and their sleep environment is perfect, they might have just had all the sleep they need, you know, and they might just be a 10.5-hour kiddie. Yeah. They went to bed at 7 and that's your 5:30 start, isn't it?
So would you recommend moving bedtime back a little if you wanted them to lay in, or just accepting that they're an early riser and they've had their sleep needs met?
Yeah, and it depends on the family, right? Because some families really value a quiet adult evening. They need that. Maybe they do busy jobs and or they've been at home all day with the kids and they just need time to decompress. Yep. I sense you understand that.
I'm like, I am. That is me. I like an evening, 1 hour to myself, and I find myself getting stressed if I can't get them to bed by a certain time. But I'll accept the early rise because I think if we're all up by 5, because I've had 2 that were 5 a.m. starts to the day, I was okay because I'm up and ready to start the day with lots of energy. But by the evening, I feel like I've been mum all day. I just need an hour where nobody needs anything from me. And I need that wind down time myself.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to prioritise yourself in this as well. Because otherwise you can't function effectively as a parent the next day. So, you know, it's a case of, you know, what's more important for you? If they're 10.5 hours, is it that time in the evening you accept the morning rise? Or is it actually, do you know what, I desperately need them to get to 6 because psychologically 6 feels a lot easier than 5 does. And you might accept that you just push bedtime back. Right. With the younger age group, it might be a really key sign that they're actually coming to the end of their sort of napping period as well, and that they're just having a lot of day sleep. It's meeting all their sleep needs, and so they're up and ready to go.
That's so true, actually. I think with my eldest, once we dropped that day nap, he then went back to doing 12 hours at night for a while, for about a year, and then gradually it got shorter and shorter again.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're right, the day nap did affect the night sleep for a while.
100%. And they actually sleep the same amount in 24-hour period, but they go from having 2 periods of sleep just to 1.
Yeah, okay. So when do you say most toddlers drop their day nap? Because that's quite a difficult one to know. When do you make that adjustment?
Yeah, it's usually around 2.5 to 3.5 years of age. Yeah. So that's a wide gap. And most kiddies will go down from a period of maybe 2 hours in the daytime to maybe just 45 minutes, and then they drop their naps. Some kiddies will stop having naps at nursery because it's just FOMO. Why would they sleep when there's so many fun things to do? And so they might be catching up at the weekend for a while when they're back at home. But it's normally 2.5 to 3.5 years of age. And most kiddies transition really nicely out of naps. But for some families, it is problematic, and they can see things like delayed bedtimes because they're not tired enough by bedtime, and bedtime starts running later and later and later. Or they might see the early morning waking because their sleep needs have just been met.
Yeah. So they're the two signs that we'd be looking out for, that we need to maybe reduce that nap or start to cut that nap.
They're the most common signs, yeah. For some families, they might experience night wakings or just you're sort of looking at the child and their mood and you're thinking, what's going on here? Something's shifting, and you get that sense.
Yeah. Would you maybe start to reduce the nap before cutting it completely, or would you say we can just tell by now that it's time to remove the nap?
It depends. And we can always just do a trial period. I think, with looking at sleep schedules and circadian rhythms, it's always worth trialling something for at least a week because it takes time. So it's, they didn't nap today and bedtime was better. It's like, well, let's try and do that for a week, see where we're at. If it's making things better, we continue. If it's not, we just stop.
Yeah.
We can always trial.
And sometimes I would find with mine, actually, when they drop the nap, that we might drop it for 2 days, but by the third day, we desperately needed the nap. And then we'd drop it again for a day or two. So it wasn't just that one day we had it and then we'd gotten rid of it. It took a little bit of time to gently remove it.
And being really patient with that as well. And, do you know what? Even if at the weekend they're refusing their naps, a nicely timed car journey might help as well. Just get them 10 minutes and then they're a different child in the afternoon. So we can always cheat.
So true. Yeah. Or avoiding the car at dinner time. That's one that we'd have to do. Yeah. Yeah. We're going out for dinner. Oh, no, not now. Not now.
Absolutely not. AC/DC in the background.
Worse. Yeah. Put the windows down. So we all have different sort of bedtime routines. How do you feel about if you were to sit and hold your toddler's hand whilst they fall asleep? Because I know some children struggle to fall asleep without you because they might be scared of the dark or they feel anxious.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd say that's absolutely fine if it's not causing any other issues because. So what we tend to see with toddlers is some of them will be really reassured by that. They're happy, they can transition into that sleep state and they wake up in the morning. For some children, they'll be really reassured by that, but then they'll have a partial waking in the night and they wake up and they go, they've gone. And they go into that almost that fight or flight response of, Mummy, where have you gone? And you were there when they fell asleep and now you've done a runner. So they either feel wronged that you've cheated them or they just, there's been enough of a change in their environment to send them into that fight or flight response. And so families tend to come to me when that routine at bedtime is no longer working. So there are multiple night wakes because they're still expecting you to be there. And then what we'd look to do is get that bedtime routine really nailed so the trust is there. So you can say at the end of it, after a really nice, calm, connected bedtime routine, you say to them, night, night, sweetheart, I'll come and check on you soon. And they really tolerate you being able to leave the room. You don't have to sit there anymore. And that takes time and sort of various methods and stuff. And we work with them a lot through play in the daytime as well to really understand that. Yeah. So, I'm not saying it's easy to achieve, but that's what we would be aiming for is they trust that you come back to check on them.
Give us some examples then. How would we start to build that tolerance for them to be alone at night?
Yeah, for sure. So I think some of them where you mentioned separation anxiety, sometimes for kiddies, their bedroom becomes this place that they're sent and they can't wait to escape from.
Right.
All right. So separation anxiety is very normal, sort of 2 to 2.5. They go through this big change. So their imaginations start running away with it. You'll notice changes with their play as well in the daytime. You can see that sort of correlates with this bout of separation anxiety. So what I always say to parents, do we spend any time in their room in the daytime? And they're like, well, no. I mean, we've been taught, haven't we, that sleep environments should be quite clinical and plain just for sleep. It's like, well, let's make it a familiar space that they actually want to be in. And then in the daytime, we can do some pop-outs during play. So it might be that mummy's going to go and get you a glass of water and I'll be right back. And we just start proving that we come back, we come back, we come back. That message that grown-ups always come back is so important. When they start trusting it and understanding it in the daytime, we can start applying the same thing at bedtime. Right. So whether we're using a method like gradual withdrawal, which is a really common one where we're moving slightly further away, we stay present, but we move further away, or pop-outs where we become very forgetful and we go and get something and then come back and then go and get something the next night. So they just get used to you sort of ebbing and flowing.
Yeah.
And nothing bad happened and they start to trust that you really do come back.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, that's actually always worked with my children, and even my eldest now, who's 7, he likes it when he can still hear me in the house. So actually, whereas my instincts are let's all be quiet so the children can go to sleep, actually if I'm sort of banging and crashing or talking to my husband quite loudly in our room, he finds that quite comforting. He's like, because I can hear that you're there, mummy, and I feel safe.
Yeah, yeah.
So I find that can be quite useful as well as popping back in.
Yeah, exactly. He's tapping into his auditory cues rather than just needing like the visual ones of seeing you there.
Yeah.
So for some families, it's just like actually having the door slightly ajar so they feel connected to the household is really reassuring as opposed to, it's like the opposite to what we think with the sleep environment. But actually if it helps the child sleep, that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, my children quite like to have night lights from their bedroom to my bedroom as well. So there's like a path. And although they don't always get up, I think it's the comfort in knowing if they do, it's not a dark walk.
Yeah,
it's just the little things, I guess, to comfort them.
Yeah, and there's a really beautiful book called The Invisible String.
Right.
And it talks about how we're all connected through these strings of love, even when we can't see each other. And that's such a beautiful book from about age 3+ to read with this age group that are struggling with that. They know that that connection is always there.
I love that. That's great. Okay, so what age do you recommend moving a toddler from the cot into the bed? Because that's quite a big challenge for everyone, isn't it? And knowing when to do it. And I think there's a lot of anxiety around actually making that move for the parent and the child.
Yeah, for sure. So I think first, if you've got a toddler that has turned into some sort of ninja overnight and starts throwing themselves out of the cot, unfortunately, there's very little we can do about that. We can try and keep them in and teach them that they might get an ouchie if they do that and they've got to wait for mummy to pick them up and take them out. But honestly, if they've done it once, they'll probably try and do it again. So we're thinking really here about impulse control. Impulse control doesn't start to develop really until about the age of 3. Better by the age of 7, but actually it's almost into early adulthood that it really completely develops. So think about your child. Do they have much impulse control? If you ask them to sit still, are they going to do it? Because when we give them the freedom of the bed, they're probably out of that bed before they've even processed what they're doing. So it's more of a developmental thing than a behavioural thing at that age. So I say wait as close as possible to the age of 3, primarily because of that impulse control issue. And then can they describe to you, why they want a bed? That's quite a nice indicator of a child actually emotionally being kind of there. And then even when they get to 3, I'd ask them, involve them in that decision. I asked my daughter and she said no. I had these grand plans of what her bedroom was going to look like, but she said no. Mummy, I like my cot. Yeah. And that was fine. 2 months later, she was totally ready because I'd sown the seed and she was like, oh, now I've kind of processed it. But for some kiddies, their cot is their safe space and it's, just like under the coffee table or behind the sofa. It's a small enclosed space. Doesn't necessarily mean the same things as adults. They must want to escape. They might not. So I'd wait for a few reasons until about the age of 3. Then I'd involve them in it. And then I would do it as a trial. So this weekend, we're going to take down one of your cot sides. Let's see how it goes. Don't be frightened to go back if it doesn't work out. Okay, that's interesting. So you can still go back to the cot if you feel like they're not ready for it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Like, well, can I? I'm like, of course. Yeah. We just pop it back. They're going to push against it. But ultimately, if it helps them sleep well, then that's probably the right decision to make. Yeah. And then just the idea of involving them if they're ready for it, or maybe involving them in decorating the room or taking something from them or baby room into their grown-up room. Yeah, absolutely. And let them see the transition into the bed. Yeah. Involve them in that. Get them playing in their room in the day so it's not a massive shock and a surprise at bedtime, which is the last time we want shocks and surprises. Absolutely. All right. So that brings us on to night terrors. How common are they, and any advice on what we can do about them? Yeah, they're really, it's one of the saddest things really for lots of families. So they're really common from about the age, sort of 2.5, 3 years plus. Often they're linked to overtiredness as well. When a child is just really chronically tired, they can be much worse. Night terrors tend to happen in about the first third of the night. So they're often sort of pre-midnight. Your child would be very confused, very shouty, and you're just like, what is going on here? honestly, it's worse for the parents than it is for the child. The child will not, or is very unlikely to remember a night terror. You ask them in the morning what that was about, and they're like, what? What was about? So night terrors they won't remember. Nightmares tend to happen in the second half of the night, and they will remember that, and they will need a lot of comfort and reassurance because they can't differentiate between dreams and reality at that point. So really with the night terrors, if your child is affected by them, they do pass. And let's try and get on top of what's ever making them really overtired. So maybe they've got multiple night wakes in the second half of the night that we can work on resolving, which hopefully then will start resolving the night terrors. But the best thing you can do is sit back, keep them safe, only intervene if they're now getting to a point where they're not safe. Sit back. When it's over, it normally has quite a dramatic finish as it does a dramatic start. We tuck them back in and we just quickly go out of the room again. There's no need to wake them up.
Okay. So just explain to me, just for anyone who's listening who doesn't know if their child's having a night terror or not, what exactly it looks like.
Often they appear very confused.
Yeah.
They might be shouting. They might appear quite irrational. They're not your child, and it's quite frightening.
They're still asleep, aren't they?
They're still asleep, yeah. It's happening in what we call NREM sleep. So is the sort of really deep sleep stages. So if we hook them up in a lab, you'll be like, but they're still asleep. And they'll obviously appear like they're still awake.
They can have their eyes open, is that correct?
Sometimes, yeah. And then there's the night terrors, and then there's also something called confusional arousals, which is less dramatic, but you're talking to your child and you think, something funny going on here, and they're really confused, almost like a drunk-like state. Yeah. So both of those things happen in like the first third of the night, and that gives you a good clue as to whether it's a nightmare or a night terror and how we should respond.
But you're so right, it can be quite distressing for the parent actually, can't it? Because looking back, my eldest went through that, but we didn't know what it was at the time, being my first child. I just was so confused as to why he was behaving like this. I think I genuinely thought he was awake, and it happened quite regularly for a good 18 months, and he would wake up, like you say, in the early hours of the night, so probably sort of 10, 11 o'clock, and he would not scream, but it was a very aggressive, loud cry, eyes awake, and be inconsolable for sometimes up to 20 minutes. And we would go through the gentle approach, a slightly more harsh approach, trying to get him to engage, trying to get him to calm down, trying to give him a sip of water. And then that was it. He'd get his blanket and go back to sleep. And we'd be like,
what's going on?
You know, we were harassed, we were stressed, we were like, what is going on here? And it took us a while and a lot of research to understand what a night terror was, and that he would grow out of it, which he has done now. And like you say, to just be there, support it, and then they go back to sleep. And he was never any wiser in the morning. He could never recall the event.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, lots of parents go in, it's like, I need to snap them out of it. And it's like, well, you're going to snap them out of it from a deep sleep state. And we all know what it's like to be woken from a deep sleep state. It's not nice. And they're going to wake up somewhere completely different, maybe outside to get some fresh air, or in the kitchen that you've been trying to get them to come round. And that's going to confuse them even more. Yeah.
Okay. What's your thoughts on co-sleeping with a toddler? Some people, where they get in and out of the bed, think it's easier just to let them in the bed and we'll continue to kind of co-sleep with them. What if you're getting frustrated that you're not getting any sleep, but you can't get them to kind of go back to their own bed and they just keep coming in?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's just, is it working as a family, right? So for me, there's two different types of co-sleeping. There's actively seeking out to have a family bed. I don't mind if they come in. I don't mind if they go out. That's just what we do. And for some families, it works really well, particularly parents who work for shifts and just don't see their child that often. They really like that connection at night. So, that's clearly working for the family and everyone's feeling rested. Then there's the co-sleeping that's almost reactive, and it's kind of, I'm really struggling at night time, just come in. And it's just like, and even then when they come into bed, sometimes that doesn't solve the issue either. So they're like, ooh, my favourite person in the whole world is now here. Yeah. And it's like, oh, mummy, I'm going to squish your cheeks. Sometimes kiddies will lie on top of you. And it's just, that's not solving the problem either. So it's like, I just think it's about nailing, is this solving the problem? Yes or no? If it's not solving the problem, then we're going to have to look at having some boundaries around your bed and being really consistent with that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're ready to tackle it, go in 100%. It has, it's not going to happen from now onwards, because toddlers don't understand that variability. Why one night they might be able to come into bed and the next night you say no. So the fairest thing we can do for them is say, we're going to be in your bedroom tonight, even if for a few nights you have to camp out in their room
mm-hmm.
to help keep them there. And then they just start waking up in their room.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of started working on that issue.
Yeah.
And then we'll look at the other reasons why they might be waking at night and seeking you out. Okay.
So your advice would be to actually go into their room, then maybe hold their hand or sleep in their bed for a little bit, wake up, go back to your bed. So they're still in their bed. So when they do stir next, they're back in their bed rather than being in with you.
It's a helpful strategy at first. If they've always been used to coming in with you, it's a really nice sort of first step for you to have a little bed in their room, because it's kind of easier to work on getting you out of their bed than them out of yours. So it's a nice first step.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't want to do it too long that then becomes norm and you're on a lilo on their floor for the rest of life.
No, I get that. Brilliant. Well, Gemma, thank you so much. I feel like there's a lot of helpful advice in there for anyone that's struggling with toddlers or preschool sleep. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure.